Welcome to Whining and Dining with Jim White. It's the show that introduces you to the people who create the flavors you love and the people who tell you about all the great eats and drinks that you love. Joining us now, our guest gourmet, Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Bud, thank you for joining us and being a part of all of our great guests.
Thank you, Jim. You have so many people who cook. All I do is type about food.
Well, I know you type about food, and we want to talk about Fort Worth Star-Telegram and Eats Beat and the great podcast and all kinds of great Tarrant County restaurants and things like that. But the burning question for me is, Bud, do you actually cook, or do you just go out and participate?
Jim, that was a great secret that Shelley and I met about 12 years ago now, and I really tried to keep a big secret, the fact that my kitchen was never really used. Now, I finally explained to her, when you write about food, I write about food in the Star-Telegram, when you write about food, there are only 3 chances a day to do any research. So I try to make the most of restaurant research, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's no reason for me to cook at home. Cooking at home is bad for my business. I need to get out and find what's going on. But the first time that Shelley came over and actually decided that she needed to heat something up in my house, she wasn't feeling well, and she thought, well, she'd heat up some soup. Well, first of all, the stove didn't work because I'd unplugged the fuse on the stove to connect it to the air conditioning or something else. So the stove wasn't even connected. But second, she opened the oven door, and I was using it as a spare clothes cabinet. So there were folded underwear and socks in the oven. So this was the alarming discovery for her. She married me anyway, but it was really a shock to her to find out that I didn't cook. Jim, a little bit of what I know and love about food, though, comes from the fact that my father cooked. People say, what did your daddy do in the war? My daddy was a mess cook in World War II. When they made the famous beach landing at Anzio, he was the one who had to carry the pots and pans and the galley onto shore under fire. He wound up, by the end of the war, he knew all his mother's recipes from Oklahoma, and he baked cakes and pies all the time. They promoted him to the general's mess. He was General Clark's pastry chef by the end of World War II.
That's amazing.
So my father and I, one of our big father-son bonding things, we went to the grocery store and did the shopping together. He taught me how to pick good meats, how to pick good fruit and vegetables, which canned goods, which brand of canned goods was better. He taught me everything about how to shop. Then he brought it all home, and my mother did the cooking, and I never learned how to cook.
Well, that's a great story. We've known each other for over 20 years, and I never knew that story. And having been in the Army, I admire what your father did because what they say is true. An Army runs on its stomach. And without that good mess chef, it would have been all over.
Well, he only cooked at home twice a year. He cooked on Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah.
And jokingly, I'd say, can you bake a cherry pie? Can you bake me a cherry pie? And obviously, and he would say, well, now, I can't just bake one pie. If you need 80 pies, I can do that. So, but he did supervise the Thanksgiving turkey and the Christmas dinner.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, after all that hard work in the Army, I don't blame him. I'd cook on special occasions at home only. Now, I animated, of course, Bud, the Eats Beat columnist for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram for, has it been 30 years, Bud? Over?
It has been 33 years.
Wow.
And literally, the Star-Telegram and the Morning News. Morning News has Guide Live. The Star-Telegram had Star Time at the time, now at dfw.com. And they didn't have a regular restaurant writer. They had they were taking contributions from the staff, and people would write about the cute little sandwich shop on the corner, or their favorite restaurant. There was no systematic organization. And I took over the section. I said, well, someone needs to do this on a regular basis where people, we cover the right things and go to the right restaurants. And I offered it to everyone on the staff, and they all were interested. They said, oh, you want me to write about food? And I said, well, now wait a minute. I said, you need to take assignments, and we're going to cover all kinds of food and everywhere. You're going to have to go cover the new Ethiopian restaurant in Euless. You're going to have to go to Sushi in Grapevine. You're going to have to go to the German restaurant in Granbury. And every person on the feature staff, 7 people, all turned me down at some point. They said, oh, I don't want to have to eat sushi, or they said, "Oh no, I don't want to go to Granbury." You know, they all had some reason that they turned me down. So I said, "Well, I'll do it myself until we hire someone." And I started writing simple reviews on barbecue and cafeteria food. And then I really gutted up and wrote a fine dining review. I took a friend who was a good cook along and to help me know what to say. And then we eventually hired a restaurant critic, but I kept doing a news and notes column. So that's what I do now. I write a news and notes column twice a week on StarTelegram.com.
You know, I admire that. I've always wanted to be a newspaper columnist. It was my secret desire. I wrote columns of high school newspaper and all of that sort of thing, and always admired it. But, you know, people look at that and they probably don't understand that that's a lot of work. I mean, regular deadlines 3 or 4 times a week. And I mean, in your case, you're covering politics, you're covering the food scene. I don't know how you managed to work out a time management scenario on that.
Well, it's just if you have an extra hour here, extra 45, look, well, I've got a little window here. I'm going to run out to that new sandwich shop, you know, and now, of course, we do all the photography too. So you run out and get something and take a picture, and you have to go during daylight so you get available light and just, you know, it's tough to plan, but you pace it. And you get 4 or 5 places in one day. I'll make you know, what I call a reconnaissance tour. Sometimes I'll take a Saturday or a Sunday and I'll make a big circle from Arlington to Euless to Grapevine to Keller and come back with notes on 4 or 5 restaurants. And I'll tell Shelley she doesn't have to cook that night.
That's right. You bring some leftovers.
I bring
back.
a lot of leftovers back.
Well, so social media. Well, how has that changed your job, your role, 33 years, for better or worse?
Well, Jim, you know this. I mean, when people started getting on Facebook or Twitter and now Instagram, you know, it was a joke at first because people, you know, everybody said, oh, all people are doing, they're posting pictures of their food. Well, you and I love it when people post pictures of their food. So social media really drives food coverage more than anything else. And because it's such a shared you know, it's such a shared media now. You share everything on, you know, the reviews on Yelp. Some of them obviously need to be discarded, but a few of them make sense. And you get pictures on Yelp, which is helpful. And so you look at Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Yelp, and that's where the community's talking about what they love, what they hate. You know, it's where we build the story of the food and the restaurants and the chefs all around us and what we love. And it's where we learn from each other about what makes food in Fort Worth or food in DFW.
So Eats Beat, the podcasts, the columns, online, and so forth, is it strictly Tarrant County? I know you've mentioned Granbury and other points. I mean, how broad is the beat for you, Bud?
Our rule for DFW.com and for Eats Beat is that we write about places in Tarrant County or that Tarrant County readers would want to go.
Okay.
So I've always said we write about places in Dallas that will be destinations, that people will go out of their way to take a trip, and we tell people, you know, when to go and how to beat the traffic and you know, what the best thing is to get when you go there so you don't go once, get the wrong thing, and never want to come back. We tell people every, you know, coming up, we tell people every Thanksgiving when the buffet at the Neiman Marcus Zodiac starts up, because that's a tradition that people really love, you know, even from Tarrant County. So we tell people about places in Dallas that Tarrant County people want to go. And a lot of times it's the first of a new chain or the first of a new company or, you know, something that will eventually make its way to Tarrant County. And we do go outside. We go to Weatherford and Cleburne and Granbury. But we try to, our website, of course, is read worldwide, but we try to serve the readers of the Star-Telegram in Tarrant County and tell them everything about food in Fort Worth, Arlington, Northeast Tarrant.
Boy, that's great. And so, therefore, if you need to know anything in those areas about what's going on in the food scene, Bud Kennedy is the guy for you. And, you know, Bud, go ahead.
I was going to say, read the website, read the Twitter feed, read the Facebook page for Bud Kennedy's Eats. And, I mean, you know, Jim, I don't know, people probably do this to you. People call and text. You know, I'll be at home on a Sunday morning and I'll get a text at 10:15 and somebody will say, you know, Bud, I have friends in from out of town. We want to go to brunch. where could we find avocado toast or something? It's like, so I'm reachable at all platforms.
That's good to know. Well, I was going to say, I used to get those types of emails and phone calls and things like that when you and I worked together on a project that was probably the most fun and rewarding project I've done throughout a long and checkered broadcast career, the KRLD Restaurant Show. For about 10 years, and you provided a Fort Worth find for us every week. So you brought Eats Beat to the radio.
Right. I just thank you very much. You were very gracious, and every week on the restaurant show there was like one little minute, and people laughed because you would have these wonderful, elegant 5-star chefs on from Dallas talking about some fine cuisine, and then I would call in on the phone and talk about the new barbecue joint at Everman. But I mean, it was something that I think that people enjoyed, that broadened the reach of the show.
Well, it was fun because one of those same shows that you're talking about, just to show you, I mean, it was Dean Fearing at the opening of a Kroger store, and him remark on how good the sushi was at the Kroger store, and I can't remember where we were. It may have been South Lake or Keller or someplace like that. Stephen Piles on, and then Sonny Bryan's episode. We always tried to do the yin and the yang of things because we understand the food scene is more than 5-star dining.
Right, and you and I had fun at one of those store openings. I think you were doing the show, and then I was doing the walking mic, talking to people, and I think we were walking June Naylor through the produce section, and she was just talking about how much she just loves produce. I mean, those were always fun.
Well, so now, but that led to your own series. Your podcast is very entertaining, very informative podcast.
Thank you, Jim. We do the Eats Beat podcast, and we started that about 5 years ago. And there were some episodes that have had 30,000, 40,000 plays. We have one of the leading podcasts in McClatchy, which is the company that owns the Star-Telegram, and actually the bean counters in Washington looked at it not long ago and have rebooted it and refreshed it with producer Steve Wilson now and my guest Robert Philpott, who is my fellow dining writer at the Star-Telegram. And so we try to put up a new episode every week, and the company loves it, and they've given us some little national attraction for it. So we have a good time, and we talk about Texas barbecue and Texas food and everything about dining in the Fort Worth area and Tarrant County. And we have a lot of listeners that are even beyond Grand Barrier Grapevine. So
well,
it works well.
I would think, especially if people are coming into the area, they're flying into DFW, they want to understand, that's the beauty of what's going on here with this show and Vocal Media. It's worldwide too. And of course, I don't think we have the coverage you do because we haven't had the run time yet to build that up. But we aspire.
Now, Jim, I'll say one thing. I mean, you and I did a show for many years, and I've continued to spread my coverage of my waistline. And it's like my waistline has gotten bigger over the years. That you can, when people say, "What are your qualifications to write about food?" You don't even cook. I just kind of turn sideways and say, "I'm an experienced diner." What more can I say? You don't look any bigger than you ever did, but I think I've picked up quite a few meals along the way.
Well, I had a physician once during a physical who reprimanded me for gaining weight shortly after I started the restaurant show on KRLD, and I'll never forget his admonishment. There were two things that stuck with me. I said, well, Doc, I'm exercising 3 or 4 times a week. And he said, don't be a fool. Your feet can't outrun your mouth. And the second thing he said was, it doesn't get any better after the first bite.
I think my downfall is pie. If I could just let go of pie, I'd be in good shape.
Well, as Justin Wilson said, everybody knows pie are round. Pie are not square. But hey, that's a good thing to throw out to you right now. Where do you go to get pie in Fort Worth or Tarrant County?
Oh gosh, now we're going to get the where do you go? Okay, I tell people the best selection is at some little home cooking cafes called Teresa's Dixie House Cafes,
okay.
And there are several of them that are conveniently located. Some of them are close to Loop 820, so it's easy to get to. One is Loop 820 and 180 in Handley. On the east side of Fort Worth. Another one is Loop 820 and 156 Blue Mound Road on the north side. Those are and then there's one in Euless. So they always have, on any given day, they have about 15 pies and about 5 cakes. And they have we think their coconut meringue might be the best. They make a Splenda coconut cream too, that in case you want to keep your sugar down. But and then they usually have a strawberry banana cake and a great chocolate fudge cake, just for having a good selection. We like Dixie House. Now the very best pie, the number one pie, and there are national friends who write about food who have come in just to wonder at this. On Wednesday and Saturday at Carson's Deli on the south side of Fort Worth, which is 100 years old now. For more than 100 years, the Carson's family has been baking or preparing deli foods in Fort Worth. 5 locations, five different places they moved over the years. But for more than 100 years, Carson's has been around. It's near TCU now. It's off of Westbury, between I-35 and TCU. Wednesdays and Saturdays, they have a chocolate meringue pie. I know friends who say they've never had a chocolate meringue pie like that anywhere. So
Wow.
I think Carson's chocolate meringue is the singular best. And I have to admit, I go for lunch 2 or 3 times a week to the Paris Coffee Shop, which usually has about 5 meringue pies and 3 or 4 fruit pies and a good selection.
Well, as they say, life is short, have dessert first. That's why we wanted to get to the pies. But I'd like to make a digression segue, if it's okay with you, Bud. You mentioned barbecue, which brought to my mind one of the most fun and memorable annual events that you and I covered during the KRLD Restaurant Show on Super Bowl Sunday every year, a tribute to Texas food called the Brown Food Bowl.
I still hear about it. People say, when are you going to do another Brown Food Bowl? So for Super Bowl Sunday, instead of the Super Bowl, we had the Brown Food Bowl, and that was inspired by writer Dan Jenkins, who wrote about food so well. He wrote about sports for many years, and Sports Illustrated, his great novels, wrote screenplays. But he also wrote stories about food, and he weaved food in and out of his novels. He talked about barbecue and chicken fried steak and enchiladas and what he thought was really good. So basically, Dan's rule was you're okay in Texas as long as you only stick to food that's either brown or white. Eat food it's either a grilled steak or it's slathered in barbecue sauce or it's topped with chili con carne, just something brown, or maybe some white potatoes with it, or some white cream gravy. So his rule was stick to brown and white food. He's 92 years old, Jim. What can I say? He's doing well.
He's doing great.
So we brought all this. So I borrowed it from Dan. It's brown food is what you stick to. And so on Super Bowl Sunday, we would always come in and talk about all the brown foods of Texas. We'd talk about the best place to get chili, barbecue, chicken fried steak, Tex-Mex. The 3 basic food groups in Texas: chili, barbecue, and fried. Those are the 3 basic food groups. So we'd talk about the best place to get Texas brown food.
Well, that was amazing. I'll never forget Brad Sham doing all the breakaways.
Barbecue's come a long way.
Barbecue, yeah. I was going to ask you about Fort Worth barbecue.
Barbecue's come a long way since. And I tell people I wrote about barbecue before it was a fashion show. Now barbecue is a TV reality show, and it's fashionable now. Hipster barbecue is so amazing, Jim, that all these young guys who in an earlier generation they would have become bankers or realtors or something with their MBAs. They come out of school with their MBAs and they open a barbecue place.
Amazing.
And they go out and get the prime. They get the Creekwood. I'm sorry, I'm not naming it right. They get the prime brisket, and they have the and they go out and do craft barbecue, and they do these wonderful, wonderful little barbecue trucks that become restaurants like Heim Barbecue in Fort Worth. Heim is almost as good as Pecan Lodge, but Pecan Lodge came around and brought a Central Texas touch and skill to Dallas Fort Worth, and then Heim started in Fort Worth with a little truck that became a big restaurant. Their second restaurant is in the West Side area, closer to my house. So I'll be in the Heim barbecue line a little more often. But Heim is one of those places like Pecan Lodge where the line forms about a half hour before the restaurant opens, and they run out of meat late in the evening. So you want to be sure and get there at least not too long after work.
Is there any special trick for getting into Heim? I know at Pecan Lodge, if you go in and order the 5-pound feed bag, you can avoid the line through the serving line.
There's not a call ahead deal like that, but Jim, I'm sure that you've talked about this before, but what restaurateurs have taught me, that the time to beat the crowd anywhere at a restaurant is on the day after a party holiday. The 5th of July is a great time to go to lunch at Heim Barbecue, Pecan Lodge, Joe T. Garcia's, anywhere that always has a line, Franklin's in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
March 18th is a fantastic day to go to lunch. January 1st, New Year's Day, if they're open, is a great
Or the day after New Year.
Or the day after. The Tuesday after Labor Day, the Tuesday after Memorial Day. Those are all great days to beat the line anywhere, and I tell readers that over and over there's another holiday coming up. Go the next day, and you can beat the line.
That's great. Now, we hear a lot about Texas Live, a lot of PR, publicity, and stuff going on. I know you did a podcast from there, and it was great. So inform us here on Whining and Dining, please.
Yeah, well, this is kind of a little phenomenon out in Arlington at the ballpark. I call it the ballpark, Globe Life Park.
It's still the ballpark to me.
Globe Life Park building, Globe Life Field. And what they built is this giant entertainment complex. And and people say, is it a food court? Is it a food hall? Is it like Dallas Alley? Is it, and it's really not like any of those. It's better. It has about 8 restaurants under one roof, including some real well-known brand names like Lockhart Smokehouse, Central Texas Barbecue from relatives of the Kreitz family from Lockhart, and then it has sports name restaurants at Troy Aikman's Bar and Grill, but it's craft menu and craft cocktails, and some different inventive kinds of burgers and things like that. I haven't had Pudge's Pizza yet, but then you have a couple of facilities. Sports and Social is a game and sports facility, and then you have a big central viewing area for the for games that has a menu of burgers and fried chicken and things like that. They are starting a Sunday buffet brunch in Troy's. They'll have an upscale champagne brunch on Sundays. That's a wonderful. They'll spread the buffet out across the patio at Texas Live. There are about 7 different restaurants, and there's all kinds out there. There's something to fit every taste. Guy Fieri's got a taco stand.
Wow!
So and the tacos are actually pretty good.
That's pretty good. Now, before we started the program, you referred to it really as a food hall. They don't know they got it, but it's a food hall.
They don't know it. They call it an entertainment complex. But it's as fun as what we think of as a food hall, because it's got a shared area in the middle and then all these restaurants around. But really all these other restaurants have their own dining rooms too. It's a food hall because it has a big central area and then it has bars. I think food halls are fun. The Crockett Row Food Hall in Fort Worth will be as nice as the one at Legacy, and I think that the whole food hall concept is good. But this is much bigger, and all the restaurants also have their own urban streetscape outside. When you're going to Lockhart or going to Troy's, it really looks like you're walking from one restaurant to another on a street in Oak Cliff or something. So they have their own patios, they have their own dining areas, and then they also they pinwheel around a central viewing area where the main TV is and the main kind of group viewing.
Outstanding.
Well, that's where they'll have the pep rallies for football games. That's where they'll have bands march in. That's where they'll have big events and big rallies. And then, Jim, they really don't know that they've got as much of a food place as they've got. They're promoting as an entertainment venue. They have concerts. They have all these wonderful things. But they really they've under promoted the food. It's better than they talk of.
Another great place in Fort Worth. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but if you give us some highlights, great new destination, the Shops at Clear Fork.
Oh, the Shops at Clear Fork is the new mall. It's the mall around Neiman's in Fort Worth. It's kind of Neiman, Fort Worth's first version of a North Park, and they have some great new facilities. They have B&B Butchers is a Houston prime steakhouse. Hasn't come to Dallas yet, but they've come to Fort Worth. High-end steakhouse, broad menu, lots of choices, and in the back they have a little custom butcher shop with red and white chicken table. So you can sit in the back and have a pastrami like an old-time deli. You can go up front and have an aged ribeye. They have a couple of bars, but they also have a crew wine bar. They have a Doc B's, which is good. They have Fix Southern House from Austin, which is a fine dining Southern, fine dining fried chicken and catfish, and biscuits that are these, triple fat biscuits, they call them, that are, some of the best biscuits ever. And they have a Malay Kitchen like Dallas. They have a Macero. They, and they have pinstripes. Oh, they have a Rise Souffle. So they have a wide variety of restaurants. And then just off Clear Fork is Press Cafe, which is a restaurant that's on the Trinity. We have 2 restaurants in Fort Worth. Well, really 3 now. We have Woodshed Smokehouse. There's actually 4. Woodshed Smokehouse, Bar Taco, HG Supply in Fort Worth, and Press Cafe that are all along the Trinity. We've made the Trinity into a dining destination.
Amazing. If Dallas could only figure out how to do that.
It works well.
Well, now, just like we used to do on the restaurant show, it's another weird segue from fried chicken and barbecue and good Fort Worth eats beats into some fine dining wine. Vicki Uncorked is with us again. Vicki Briley White's going to introduce you to some wines that you might want to try. Leslie Hartman, the sommelier at the French Room in Dallas, has some details for you. Vicki?
This is Vicki Uncorked, and I am with Leslie Hartman, the sommelier at the French Room at the Adolphus Hotel in downtown Dallas. And I am going to find out what is your favorite food and wine pairing for you.
My favorite food and wine pairing, oh my. I love coastal wines with crudo. When we first opened, we had a really beautiful crudo that chef prepared that was really just light and fresh and salty. And so we would go down to the Languedoc, to regions like Cassis and Couture, and just play around with all of the different Mediterranean wines. On the flip side, with those lighter foods, I find Aligoté fascinating, especially how many people don't know about it and really love it. And so with the saltier foods, especially, I love Aligoté with that high acid. It's just got so much character and it's so approachable. And people don't realize that it's the other white grape from Burgundy. With the vineyards warming, it's becoming more ripe, and people are getting really excited about it.
With global warming, different grapes are starting to show up in different ways.
There will always be wine to drink.
Exactly. Have you ever had and we know you have, but had a really lamentable pairing? Not one that you picked, but that you were served someplace that you just had to grin and bear it.
Well, I wouldn't say that I grinned and bear it. I feel like sometimes people feel like you have to have white wine with fish, and I don't always want white wine with fish. And so I've had some very simple whites paired with salmon per se, where the salmon just completely overpowers them. And you can do a white. I'd prefer a rosé or a Pinot Noir or something that can really stand up to it. So
I agree.
I haven't honestly had too many lamentable pairings, but there have been a couple. One was a 2010 Condrieu that just wasn't alive anymore. It didn't last, and so I felt like they were trying to get rid of something on me. But I got involved with wine because it seemed like a natural progression with where I had come from with bartending and teaching French and then working in fine dining. And at a sommelier, I was studying the list, and he gave me some really great advice and encouragement. His name's Dan Miller. He's an advanced sommelier in Fort Worth, and it's really inspiring. And so I just kind of followed him and different people that I knew in Fort Worth, and it was a wonderful group of people to learn with and from. And here I am now in Dallas and still learning.
In the beautiful French Room at the Adolphus Hotel.
Yes.
That's a nice leap.
It is. It's the dream, really, is being here. And it's a wonderful, wonderful room full of memories and warmth. And the wine list is so much fun to play with because it's the French Room and there's a French focus. And I'm such a Francophile that it's really a dream.
Yes, let's talk about this wine list. Now, girl, here we are. You come in, you're going to have dinner, and then we have pages and pages and cages. So what do you recommend for the new wine drinker?
Well, so starting out, we just kind of introduce how the wine list is set up and let them have a moment to digest.
Yes, or a week.
There's a bit, yes. So we have the table of contents in front, and it's organized by the glass, half bottles, your sparkling, rosé, whites, and reds, with the French section taking the lead each time. And so we have wines from all over the world, but of course France is our main focus. It's about 2/3 French. So I'll usually give people a moment. If I see them flipping through, I'll stop by and just offer some assistance. And sometimes they're enamored and they're wine lovers and they want to be left alone with the book. And sometimes they just put it down and say, help. And so then we just start a conversation.
It's interesting because when we go out to eat, they always give Jim the wine list, which I immediately take away from him.
It's the same with me and my husband.
And I'm always reading wine lists. But you know, it's like Jim said when we had dinner here the other night, he said, we needed to have this sent to us in advance because you know, you're not used to it, seeing it so broken down into...
It's very regional.
More regional than just Bordeaux, Burgundy, etc.
Now I have helped develop the list, but I've inherited a lot of it from a Burgundy lover. And so we have some fantastic Burgundies, and he really narrowed it down to the villages. And
yes, he did.
Yes, and they're all very different, very expressive. So it's a lot of fun to introduce people to the elegance of Chambord-Musigny and the power of Gevrey-Chambertin, and so it's a lot of fun to play with.
Where do you see yourself going from here?
Well, I won't be leaving here for quite a while. This was the end goal, and it came a bit more quickly than I had anticipated. So I'm just going to stay here and try to help develop the staff and the education. Travel is very important to me. So working for a hotel, there is an added benefit there that assists in travel and education. Just being a part of this community in Dallas, there are a lot of amazing female sommeliers in Dallas as well that I'm excited to be a part of, just growing with them.
Well, thank you, and we are happy to be here with you. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
It's a beautiful new room if you haven't been. Yeah, I said new. The French room looks completely different than it used to. Very contemporary, and a great wine list as always. Thanks, Vicki. Bud Kennedy, man, where does the time go? Maybe like we used to do, we could get you in here on a regular basis to cover Fort Worth and Tarrant County.
I didn't even talk about Paris 7th, which is the new version of the old Saint-Emilion. There's so much more.
It's a very happening scene, and I tell you what, I'd really like to do that if we can figure out your schedule. Occasionally have you back in to just cover Fort Worth and Tarrant County, the Eats Beat that you do so well.
I can cross the county line and come see you anytime you want, Jeff.
All right, Bud, and thank you again so much for being with us with our guests this month. As our guest gourmet, you're splendid, my friend.
Thank you, Jim. I'm flattered to be here.
All right. And anybody, yes, he speaks for a living. And remember, if anybody asks you what you're making for dinner, tell them reservations somewhere in Tarrant County and read all about it with Bud Kennedy in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram.